We've got the equation y equals f of x been marked onto this graph. We need to write down the coordinates of the point where the graph of y equals f of x plus 2 crosses the x-axis. So remember, a little thing to be on the lookout for with these sorts of questions, with the transformations of graph questions. If the change is on the outside of the bracket, so if it looks like this or this, then it affects the y coordinates only, and you just do what it usually tells you to do. So we would add a to the y coordinate, or we would multiply the y coordinate by a. Or if the change is inside the brackets, like this or this, it affects the x coordinates and you do the opposite. So if it says to add a, you take a away from the x coordinates. If it says to multiply by a, you're going to divide the x coordinates by a. So in this case here, that minus 2 is inside the bracket, it affects the x coordinates, and I'm going to add 2 to the x coordinates. I'm interested in finding the coordinates where the function is going to cross the x-axis. So I'm looking particularly at these 2 points here, because that's where the graph of f of x crosses the x-axis. And I'm going to add 2 to both of those. So this coordinate here is 0, 0. This coordinate here is 4, 0. And I'm going to add 2 to the x coordinates. So this will become 2, 0. And this will become 6, 0. Part 2. Write down the coordinates of the point where the graph of f of x minus 2 crosses the y-axis. Well, that's where it's going to cross on the y-axis here. So let's think about which point would end up on that axis with this. When I've translated the graph, when I've added 2 to all of the x coordinates. So when x is minus 2, when I add 2 to that, that's going to move to be on here. That will then move to be on the y-axis. So this point here, the coordinates minus 2, 4, under this transformation, when I add 2 to this, that would become 0, 4. And that will then be where it cuts on the y-axis. Finally, part B. On the diagram above, sketch the graph what f of x, y equals f of x plus 2. So that plus 2 is outside the bracket, it affects the y coordinate. So I'm going to add 2 to all of the y coordinates. So every point here is going to move up 2. This point is going to move up to be here. This point here is going to move up to be there. This point here is going to move up to be there. So the whole thing shifts up 2 squares, and it's going to end up looking something like this. So this is my f of x plus 2.